I'll just bring you into the podcast like I told you. Like I'll just start and then we'll be off to the races. So here we go.
Okay.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Hit It podcast. It is not every day you get a Hall of Fame athlete into the virtual studio to have an interview. And who I have with me today is a very special guest, Rhoni Barton-Bischoff. Welcome to the Hit It podcast.
Thank you, Tyler. I can't tell you how excited I am to get to be a part of this. I've been watching you do this, and I'm just thrilled and honored that I can participate today.
Well, so excited to have you on the podcast. I've admired you for many of years, being a junior athlete. I remember watching you go through the ranks and achieve so many things. And it's, as I prepare for these things, Rhoni, I told you offline, I'm looking at your resume. And although I knew that you won and accomplished a ton of things, I was, again, just blown away at your career. And today on the podcast, I want to talk about your career, but I also want to talk about what you're currently doing now, not only with Nautique, but the way you're coaching kids that we're going to see at the Junior Masters this month, as this is going to be launched in May. So there's a lot of ground to cover, and I'm super, super excited. But first of all, just bring us up to speed what you've been doing.
Well, let's see. I officially retired. I guess it's been about 10 years already, which sounds like a really long time. I have two boys. One is 14 and one is 11. So after I had my first son, I went right back to skiing, and number two slowed me down a little more. I've always really worked closely with Nautique, even when I was competing. And so as I got to kind of my last final years in the sport, it just made sense. It seemed like it would work to transition over. I had actually worked on the Masters committee for many years as an athlete rep. So I had a lot of ideas about what went into the tournament, what the event coordinator did behind the scene, and kind of a little bit about what it took. So when Brian Sullivan approached me, I guess it's been about 8 years already ago, about doing the job, I thought it was a great transition for me. It lets me stay heavily involved in the sport at the highest level. And I mean, if you're going to run one tournament in the world, why wouldn't you want to run the best one there is? So it just made sense. And, I have to say, Tyler, I think Nautique also knew that there was not a good chance of getting me to go sit at a desk job all day, every day. And being the event coordinator gives me a lot of flexibility. And I can continue with coaching. I can help with PD&D and product development and kind of all those things that help make me happy. I like to have my hands in a lot of different things. And this job just suits me perfect because it gives me the time and the availability to be a mom, to be a wife, to coach, to ski, to work out, to run tournaments, and to do, all the things that I love to do. So I'm really blessed. I think that Nautique recognized what would make me happy, and then also tried to find a position for me that would let me stay on the water, let me stay in the boats, let me stay at tournaments. Because at the end of the day, if I'm happy, I'm going to do better work too. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sounds like a perfect position for you, and running the best tournament on earth, the US Masters. And, that's only a couple weeks away. I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about your career. I spoke to you a little bit about this offline, and it comes up all the time. I mean, we talk about hot summer nights on this podcast. We talk about kind of those years in which a lot of our audience fell in love with the sport because it was broadcast, and we'd pull it up on our TVs. The earliest memory that I have of you skiing is junior girls. I think it's 1989, Okehele Park. The Nationals is being broadcast. You come off the jump, and I remember it like pauses, and you turn back, and the camera like pauses that frame, and you have the cage hockey helmet on, jumping. And then, we kind of follow your career throughout the 90s as your rise to fame. But there has always been a push. There's always been a drive about you that you've always wanted to be the best. And I just wanted to hear it from you, like how it got started and what it was like on that journey.
Oh, for sure. Well, there are a lot of stories, but a few that stand out to me. I was born and raised in California. So I grew up skiing in the Canyon Lake Ski Club. And it's a big club. There was a lot of members. They had a little starting list down at the dock, and you had to go write your name on the list and wait in line for your turn. But I really credit the ski club for kind of instilling the push in me. And believe it or not, we had club tournaments every month. Once a month, we had a ski club tournament all winter long, dry suit, 40-degree water. We had club tournaments, and the tournaments were ability based. Which is interesting to me. So you had classes, you started out in the 14 to 18 mile an hour class, you ran 18, you moved up. Well, as I hit like 10 or 11 years old, they had the superstars class. And back then that was like the hot dog men 3 skiers. So you can imagine where little Rhoni wanted to end up was in the superstars class. And that group of gentlemen that competed at that level, they were also the dads that were driving the tournaments, scoring the tournaments. They were really good friends with my dad. They were the ones putting all the time into my skiing. And I really chased sort of in those early years that advancement every year. The club did a banquet in the year. So there was a lot of motivation from the club members, to kind of grow my desire to improve. And I was rewarded for that. And I think that model of encouragement worked really well for me. And then when I was 13, my dad brought me to Groveland, Florida. And you might remember this tournament. It was called the Superstars, and Dave and Cindy Benzel ran the tournament in Groveland, Florida. And it was kind of like the best of the best kids. And this particular year at the Superstars, they were also having the Junior World team trials. So I was 1 year too young. So maybe I was 12. And my dad brought me, I got to compete in the Superstars, but I got to watch the junior team trials. Scott Ellis, JD Wiswald, April Coble, Christy Overton. And I think he did that to kind of show me kind of what the next step was going from Canyon Lake to what does going to like the big leagues look like. And I had done some nationals, but Junior Worlds is like a whole nother step up from even nationals, like giving me a taste of what these kids were doing to make international competition. And I left the Superstars, and I was fired up. And so the very next year, I made my first US junior team. Wow. And competed there all through juniors, Junior Worlds and Pan Am championships and pretty much everything under the sun on the junior level at that point. So I think just that introduction of seeing those kids that had put in all the time, all the work, all the effort. And I saw what it took. I saw them out there competing for those, 4 small little spots.
Sure.
The Junior Worlds really, really inspired me. And so then from there, I actually, this kind of ties into the Masters, but this year is the 30th Junior Masters. So it's a bit of a milestone. But the first year they had the Junior Masters would have been my last year in juniors. Okay. So I was like, oh no, I'm not doing the Junior Masters. I want to qualify for the Open.
And that was one of my questions today. If you had ever skied in the Junior Masters, but it sounds like you opted to go up.
Yeah. So Jack Travers hosted the infamous last chance qualifier. And obviously, anything can happen, but I was probably a shoo-in to go to Junior Masters and win Junior Masters. But again, like that push, I want to keep moving up. I want to progress. I'd already won Junior Worlds. I'd won all the Pan Ams. I was like, I want to go chase, Dina and Camille. And so I opted out of junior masters. I went to the last chance qualifier and I qualified. So the first year they had junior masters, I skied my first elite masters. I was still in high school.
That's really interesting, because that tells me a lot about kind of what you viewed tournaments as, in the sense of, you know, drive is different for different athletes. You know, sometimes it's just about medal count, sometimes about progression. But you probably go to junior masters that year, if you did, and you probably take the top of the podium. But instead you say, well, it's not really about that. I want to go up there into the big leagues, and I may not make the top of the podium, but that's not what this is about. It's about getting better. Was that kind of the mentality?
Yeah, I think, you know, my parents, I never felt a lot of pressure from them to win. You know, I think they wanted me to be the best I could be. And going back to that superstar story at Canyon Lake Ski Club, I mean, I guess it just was instilled with me to push to be the best I could be, not necessarily to win. And I really appreciate that from my parents, because they just constantly supported me sort of in my chase to become the best. But I think stretching yourself, challenging yourself, but pushing yourself always to climbing to the next level, I think that came from them. It had to have, because I don't know how you get that on your own as a kid. And, you know, Jack and Leilani were big supporters of me with that too. Like, I think it would have been really easy for Jack to say, hey, no, do junior masters, you know, stay down,
Sure.
take the wins. But I think they knew where I wanted to go ultimately. And
Sure.
I think the only way I was going to get there was to not settle and to keep pushing up. So for me, for my personality, I think that mindset worked, and the people around me also supported that mindset.
Well, one of the things in water skiing, and we talk about slalom, trick, and jump on this podcast, and we talk, you know, here and there about overall, but really you're one of the most accomplished overall skiers that we've had on the podcast. Your whole career centered around overall. You know, I'm taking a look at your resume. I mean, for 11 years, you were ranked #1 in the world in overall on the rankings list. I mean, the consistency over a decade long of arguably one of the hardest things to do in sports, not be just consistent in one or two events, but all three. Tell us about that journey, because that's a special thing in and of itself, and how to train for it.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. I mean, I I always said I want to be on the podium in all three events. And it was a little harder to win, you know. It was a little harder to win because there was always a specialist there, but I just said I don't want a weak event. I don't want one event to be weak. And I trained hard. I mean, I skied 5-6 sets every day. I put the time in, and you know, at one point in my career, I was like, I want to hit all the eights. I want to run 38. I want to trick 8, and I want to jump 180. And that was like a big goal back then, to be able to say you could do those three things. Probably still a goal now, really. I mean, striving to that level in all three events is difficult. And even today, there's only a few, you know, less than probably a handful of people that are really solid in all three events. And that was always my goal. It was just like, I don't want to be credited for having one really weak event. I just want to get them as even as I can. And I really evened out the training, you know, and put in the time. I guess that, I don't know why that was a goal. It just was like something that I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about that first Masters. How was it? I mean, you're there. There's no prep time as far as being a junior, because the junior master hadn't been introduced yet. So like, here you are, center stage. What was that experience like?
Yeah, you know, I mean, Camille Duval was there. Dina had just retired. You know, Andy Mapple was there. I mean, it really was. Wade Cox was there. You know, the Shaylanders were there. The Larson twins were there. I mean, when you go back and look at the who's who of skiing, they were on that dock with me. And man, you can't replace that motivation. You know, you can't replace that. And I think today, you know, when we get the juniors on the dock with the pros, you know, that inspiration and that kind of that getting to have that little bit of connectivity is huge. It's a big motivator. So yeah, I mean, I just stood there kind of awestruck the whole weekend. I remember being on center stage at the pavilion with Camille going like, I'm standing on the dock with Camille Duval right now. Like, what am I doing? You know, and same with Britton Ton Larson. I mean, they were just amazing. And so I don't really remember how I skied. I think I skied fine, but I can tell you that the next year I won. I won my first overall title, my second Masters. So something there, I think just that motivation, again, that example, seeing what they put into it, seeing the focus, seeing how they came off the dock and delivered, it obviously clicked because I continued to put in the work. And when I won that second Masters, I was a senior in high school. So I actually probably could have done junior Masters that year too.
Wow. I did not know that. So you were still in high school when you took the overall and elite Masters. So what year are we talking around there?
Oh, I'm so bad with this, Tyler.
It's gotta be
94.
94. So you're up there. Okay. So the year before you're on the dock, like, oh man, like the people around me, this is the who's who, and I'm out here with the who's who. Now you're standing there, and those pictures of the 90s, I remember on those overall trophies, you would stand with the cup, I believe, next to whoever with the and who was it?
So,
had to be like Jared or Patrice. Who was
I won one with Patrice and the next one with Jarrett. So same.
Wow.
How do you get better than Patrice and Jarrett? So here I am, this little high schooler, and it's funny. I remember Britt Larson braided my hair so I could stand on the pavilion and hold up the overall cup. And Bo Calloway was there. Bo Calloway was the one that presented me with the cup, and I held the cup over my head. Senior in high school.
Very, very cool. And it's just for our audience to give them a glimpse of the overall and how important that was during that particular time. We just had Jimmy Seamers on the podcast. He said, I got to ski against Jarrett, but I always wanted to ski against Patrice, but he retired. And I even said, I'll have a private tournament just to go against you, but they never could make it happen. So the fact that, you're standing up there along with Jarrett and Patrice, it's like, wow, this is unbelievable. So do you win them? Does it go back to back, or how do you win those overalls over the years?
I think I won 94 and 96. I'm so bad with my resume. I'm sorry. I think I won 94, 96. I think there was a year break in between. Maybe Patrice won those two, because when I went back, I think Patrice was done when I ended up winning with Jarrett. And funny story, the year I won with Jarrett, I am on the pavilion and also at the banquet on the stage, and Dorian Llewellyn was born in May. He was a couple weeks old, and I had been training with Craig and Jarrett some at that time, and we're holding Dorian Llewellyn, who's like 3 weeks old. And now, look at Dorian Llewellyn. It's like, I mean, this stuff, you can't make this stuff up, right? So I used to call Dorian Llewellyn superstar, and I've got a picture of me holding him at the Masters the year I won, when he's a couple weeks old with Jarrett. So
very cool.
It's fun memories,
Well, yeah. And especially when you look now, here we are, 2023, ramping up for the world tournament again. And Dorian's right in the thick of it with Joel Poland. I mean, overall's in good hands. During this time, when you're winning these Masters and overall, who is your main competition out there?
So it was deep. It was a lot deeper than, like you said, maybe it is now. So I had Elena Milikova.
Okay.
From Russia. Remember that name?
Yep.
Angela Andriopoulou from Greece. Marina Masti from Italy. Sarah Gotti-san at the time from England. I mean, the list goes on and on. There was like 10 of us probably that could battle it out. I mean, Emma Shears was still doing overall at that time. And her slalom and jump were so incredibly strong that made her a strong overall skier. Tony Neville was there. She wasn't tricking anymore, but slalom and jump. So it was deep. April Coble, from the US, April Coble, Karen Truelove. I mean, there was
So the field is, yeah, the
overall
depth is so deep, like, it's not like you're going to go out and miss your first pass on tricks and still win overall. Like, you're
no,
going to have to ski perfect.
You had to ski to the top of your game to win, because it wasn't 2 or 3 fighting for the overall, it was all of them. And at that time, Masters was centered more around overall. And yes, the individual specialists were there, but it was really, the tournament was really more centered around overall at that time in the 90s. I mean, by the time I got later in my career, not so much, but those beginning years for me were very overall based.
Sure. So I wanted to ask you about that too, because there was a shift there at early 2000s to ski fly.
Yes.
Did you ski fly?
Oh yes, I ski flew at the Masters. In fact,
okay,
probably my worst recorded crash of my entire jump career. So this particular year, with the way the wind was blowing, they had to spin the ramp. So we had to jump towards the slalom start dock, if you remember that. So not only were we ski flying, but we were whip style ski flying, because we're on that short north end, and Les Todd was driving and I took the whip, and I got a little too late, but I was not going to let go, and huge crash. But yeah, I did do the era of ski flying. Of course, Scott Ellis, put in a lot of time with me, Bruce and Tony Neville. I think I'd have to look, but I think I'm still the US national record holder for ski fly for women.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
All right. I'm going to look that up.
There you go. That might be my big claim to fame now, Tyler.
No, it is. And ski fly's come up a couple of times on the podcast. Of course, our first ever recorded podcast was with the Rocket Man. So we talked about ski fly there. And I think I said on that podcast, I was there as a junior athlete in 2003, and I had never seen ski fly before. And I remember Les in that boat. The engine was so powerful. You would sit on the pavilion and it's just like rumbling through your blood and skin. And you're like, these people are really going to go off the jump. I mean, it was incredible. So, wow, I did not know about that part of your career. So you go all the way through that. So are you balancing traditional jump along with ski fly and the other two events? Because now you kind of have a hybrid style of how to do overall going on.
Yes, I was doing both. I was traditional jumping and ski flying, at the same time. So we would just switch back and forth. I mean, you kind of got used to it, because it was different timing with the longer rope and the faster speed. I will admittedly say on the podcast that the girls were allowed to go 41 miles an hour. I only ever went 39. But you got to remember, I weighed like $110, right? So like there was Rhoni wasn't really signing up for 41 with the boat. So I kept the speed at 39. So maybe you could accuse me of being a little bit of a chicken.
No, not at all. Not anyone who ski flies, not at all. And
the thing is, Masters especially.
Well, yeah. So is, obviously a larger body of water. It's the mysterious waters of Rodman Lake. You never know exactly what's going to happen. But the fact we're talking about 39 to 41 miles an hour, if people who never had the opportunity to watch ski fly, and I never ski flied, but I was told that when you got up to those types of speeds, just even behind the boat and in your glide, I mean, the tail of the ski is really not even sitting in the water. So you're almost pushed up onto your front toe. Yeah. So what was the factor of the speed? Like 39 to 41, was it just like the way you would stand on your ski, you were like, no, I'm not going to do that? Or was it just so much faster? At
41, I just couldn't get my skis settled in the water to edge through the ramp. Okay. And some of the girls did go 41. That was our max speed, but I could just settle in and hold an edge through the base of the ramp better at 39. So I was honestly going farther at 39 than I was at 41, because I could just settle that little bit more.
Sure.
So yeah, so I admittedly stayed on the lower end of the speed spectrum there.
Wow, incredible. Well, you touched on this a little bit. Like back in those days, as we lead up to the Masters, there was one event that if you weren't already qualified for the Masters, it was the last chance qualifier. In recent years, we've gone to the Masters qualifying series. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how athletes are going to be gearing up in the month of May for the Masters to try to qualify?
Of course. Well, so the shift kind of started with COVID, just because that year there was not a lot of tournaments worldwide. There were some countries that hadn't gotten to compete at all. So we couldn't really use a strong series of high-level professional events to qualify athletes in. So we created the Masters qualifying series to give skiers from all over the world the opportunity to come and compete and qualify in. And really, I mean, the mission statement of the Masters is, it always has been, to win on the waters of the world. And, you know, you got to think about it this year. In the elite event, we're only taking the best 8 in the world. Well, there's arguably different ways to get the best 8, but if you win when all your competitors are standing on the dock competing against you for the spot, you win. It's different than somebody skiing at their record tournament in their country and you skiing at your record tournament in your country and comparing scores. I mean, when you really put people on the dock and send them out to compete for the spot, the champion shines through. And so what we've noticed with the Masters qualifying series is that we've had insane results. I mean, particularly at the junior level. I mean, last year, the 4 boys that got in all ran personal bests against each other to get those spots into the tournament. So you're bringing out the best in the athlete to get them there. So this year we're doing a little bit of a hybrid, because obviously in 2022, we were back to more of a traditional, season. Since COVID, we had a lot of high level events. So the Masters committee targeted certain tournaments that were pre-qualifiers for the Masters. And if you won those, you punched your ticket straight into the Masters. So defending Masters champion, California Pro-Am champion, the Botas champion, Junior Worlds punched their ticket straight to Junior Masters. So those key high-level events where athletes are winning on the waters of the world, where their competitors are there, went straight in. Now, this month coming up in May, we're going to have 2 qualifiers, one at Drew Ross's, one at Jack Travers. And it's the same thing. You really got to show up and win to get those last few spots into the Masters. And it's the same for pros and juniors. We expect the same. We want our juniors stepping up and winning on the waters of the world, not sending in a score, that they did at their home site. So
yeah, and that's interesting too, because the tournaments that you referenced, I guess all of those tournaments, they happened in 2022, so they carry over, right?
Yes.
And here you've got 2 tournaments leading up to the Masters, which really can be a huge advantage for athletes who progress in the off season, right? Like they may have just not been there last year just from their talent level, and then worked really, really hard, and now here we go. There could be some new names and faces just like that.
Exactly. And historically, if you look over the years at the last chance qualifier, especially even at the elite level, the skiers that get in at the last chance qualifiers have all gone and made the finals at the Masters, because wow, to your point, they are skiing hot. They're the best that they can be, and they're on fire, right, going into the Masters. It's not that they skied good last July, won a tournament, and now they're showing up in May. So I really feel like, yes, is it nice as an athlete to be pre-qualified and not have to worry about punching your ticket? Sure. But I really feel like it's an advantage to be skiing good and to go earn your spot, because honestly, it's probably harder to get in the last chance qualifiers than it is to show up at the dock at the Masters, sure, and just go do your job. And also to your point, and I did this many times in my career. Injury, the year I did my ACL, I couldn't compete. I didn't have scores. Show up at the last chance qualifier, get your spot into the Masters, and you show up and you ski great. They do the same thing with the women who sit out a year and have a baby. They got to work really hard, get back in shape, show up at the qualifier, earn their spot, punch their ticket back in. So there's really a lot of value for the athlete skiing well going into the last chance qualifiers. And to your point with the juniors, somebody who maybe was mid-pack, maybe they're 10th or 12th in the world last year as a 13, 14, 15-year-old, they can have an amazing off season, work their tail off and pick up a pass and slalom, 20 feet jump, couple thousand points in tricks, and they may be your winner this year. So I think it's motivating all the way around. I think it's a big positive for the sport on many levels. And personally, I like watching, I'm a fan of this. I love watching the underdog show up at the qualifying series, punch their ticket in, and then go, whoop up on everybody at the Masters. It's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, some of my greatest memories of going to the Masters and watching and announcing have been that person who is able to punch their ticket in is usually the first one off the dock.
Yeah.
And there's been time and time again, just that person sets this ridiculous pace in the preliminary rounds to be like, okay, yeah, here's what I did. Now all you veterans come chase me.
It's amazing. And it makes the tournament more exciting for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Rhoni, going into the 63rd Masters, talk to us a little bit about what people would expect. Friday, the Junior Masters, 2 rounds, a preliminary round and a final. And then Saturday is the preliminary round. You got to punch your ticket into the final round, which is on Sunday. But Callaway Gardens, Pine Mountain, Georgia. Talk to us about it.
Okay, for sure. Well, of course, the first thing you want to do is watch all the action, at the Masters. It's going to be really exciting this year. Every year I say the level can't go any higher. And these guys show up and they certainly take the level of the skiing up every year. So it's going to be amazing. Callaway Gardens for me, I've been going, I did over 20 Masters. So I've been going there forever. I feel like since I was born, right? But not quite that long. But it has a special place for me with my family too. Lincoln, my 14-year-old, was with me on the dock when he was less than a year old at my first Masters back after having him. And it's just an amazing weekend for your family. The Callaway Gardens has the Aqua Island, which is the inflatable park. The kids love that. There's putt-putt golf. There's the zip lines. There's bike paths. Your family wants to rent bikes and go do an amazing bike ride to see the beautiful gardens. There's the Butterfly Museum. The beaches are amazing. Of course, we want to thank GM Marine. They're going to put on the outstanding fireworks show that we can.
And it is outstanding. It's unreal.
It's unreal. So Saturday night at dark, General Motors is going to put on the fireworks show for us. The food vendors. There's just so much to enjoy there, on the water and off the water. And I encourage, the people that come to go see what Callaway has to offer. Pine Mountain has some cool things too. We cannot talk about Masters without talking about the drive-through zoo, right?
The drive-through zoo.
Zoo. You get in this rental car with no windows, black and white painted like a zebra, put your family in, buy your bag of food and drive through the zoo and feed these animals. You got to record it. I actually have a good story for you on this. So Shannon Starling, who is WWA, World Wakeboard Association, one year, his kids are in college now, but his son was maybe 3 or 4. And he was like, Rhoni, Chris, come with us to the drive-through zoo. We're driving through the zoo. His son's like 3 or 4. He's literally on the floor going, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Because these huge, deer, oxen, bison are like sticking their heads in your window. Their tongues are like 10 inches long and they're licking you in the car trying to get the food. You can't not go to Pine Mountain and do the drive-through zoo. And these are the memories that you're going to create with your friends, your family, the other athletes. All the skiers go, you'll probably see a skier in the drive-through zoo. You got to go do it.
Well, what's interesting too about Masters is there are some diehard fans that have been going to the Masters. Like that is a marked weekend on their calendar, the last weekend in May, that they are going to be headed to Pine Mountain to go to Callaway. They come with old Masters t-shirts, you know,
Perfect.
dating way back. I mean, the knowledge of what people know about water skiing just from the general population that shows up is pretty unreal. I mean, I'll go down and just walk along the beaches and we'll be, you know, swimming or something. And I'll just strike up a conversation. I just can't even believe what just, you know, hey, yeah, we go out and ski once or twice a year, but we always come here. And then they start bringing up stories of like what happened in the 80s. I mean, the knowledge is incredible there. But one of the other cool things about the Masters that I absolutely love, I mean, we talked a lot about overall in 3 event on this podcast, but is the wakeboarding because a lot of times, you know, if we're only at like a 3 event site, we're not seeing wakeboarding, but these beautiful Nautique boats with these wakes, you get so close to them because you can get out into the water and watch the athletes ride by. So that is one of my favorite things about the Masters because there is a blend between slalom, trick, and jump and wakeboarding.
For sure. I think it breaks up the day, right? Because you can go to a traditional water ski tournament and you're gonna watch 5 hours of slalom and 3 hours of tricks and 5 hours of jump. What I love about the Masters is it is only the best, literally the best 8 skiers out there duking it out, the best 8 wakeboarders duking it out. And the pace is fast, right? You watch a little slalom, then you watch a little trick, then you watch a little jump, then you watch a little wakeboard, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. It entertains you, and it really does a good job highlighting our sport. And I'll tell you, the wakeboard criteria is no less loose than the water ski criteria. I mean, they've got an insanely deep field. And again, the best 10 men, pro men will be there, the best 8 pro women, and then 6 junior men, 6 junior women. And these guys throw down. I mean, we are notorious, again, like the skiing, the athletes have landed the double backflip for the first time ever at the Masters,
Right.
or they've landed, a 1080 for the first time at the Masters. So the same thing happens with the wakeboarding. They raise their level of performance because of the venue, because of the mystique. And I think the history of the tournament just makes it feel more important. I mean, you walk onto the dock and they're playing Stars on the Water. I mean, if you can walk onto the pavilion and hear Stars on the Water and not get nervous, even if you're not skiing, you're nervous, right? Like, if you're not wakeboarding, if you're not competing, I think it's just the nostalgia, the history, the fact of knowing who was there before you, what it takes to be there. And I mean, Tyler, for being honest, anytime you have to qualify for something to get to go, automatically you've got controversy, automatically you've got hype, automatically you've got prestige, because everybody wants to get to go. And as soon as you say, no, sorry, not everybody gets to go, the level raises. And I think there's really no other tournament in the world that can do that. I just think that it's impossible. But then you do that, and the athletes, they take those nerves and that anxiety and that history and that nostalgia, and they just kick it up a notch, and they do things there that have never been done before anywhere else. And then we get to, and the fans, like you said, get to sit back and enjoy the show. So I just think it's the whole package, and obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but we're creating the boats that are allowing these athletes to continue to perform. We have the best coaches there. So it's just a recipe for overall success.
Yes, could not agree more. And in the words of my really good friend, Desbert Kennedy,
Yeah.
action, 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 drama, drama, drama. And that's what it's all about
Yeah.
in that weekend. So much going on. So, Rhoni, you're doing incredible things at Nautique. You're doing incredible things all over the sport, really. But talk to us specifically about coaching, because you've been really involved with coaching some of these junior athletes that we're going to see again this year at the Junior Masters.
Yeah, well, it's funny. When I started skiing with Jock and Leilani, going back to those years of superstars and junior worlds. You know, they run a ski school, and I got involved running the ski school, learning to drive, learning to coach. And I just had a big passion for it. And sometimes I feel like in my mind, like, oh, I've just retired and I've just started coaching. But I was looking at this the other day. I took the US junior team to Chile for the junior worlds, like in 2004. So I'm like, I've been doing this like all these years, and it's just kind of been like a side hobby. But I'm really committed to the juniors, and I will say I've been blessed to have like a whole slew of children who are not my children, maybe my children from another mother, who have lived with us, who have trained with us, who have let me kind of pour into them and teach them what I know. And it's just a big passion for me. And I'm really lucky that Nautique has continued to let me spend the hours a day that they let me spend in the boat, while also being the event coordinator for them. And yeah, I mean, looking back over the years, I've got a lot of big names that I've gotten to coach and been blessed to work with. So a few fun stories, maybe one good one. So when I competed, I feel like I just skied all the time. It was just work, ski, more sets. And it paid off for me. It worked. I also suffered, you know, quite a few big injuries. I had some setbacks. I maybe wasn't always as prepared for the right tournaments at the right time. And you can look back and reflect on these things as you get older, like, oh, hey, well, maybe if I was doing 25 tournaments in the year, I maybe should have highlighted the 3 or 4 that were the most important as I got older and set my training up for that. I didn't do that. And I remember one specific time later in my career, I was jumping a lot with Freddie Krueger. And at the end of one of my jump sets, he was like, Rhoni, you can't just ski more to get better. Like, you need a plan, like you need goals. You need to set specific things that need to change, that you need to address for you to get better. Because everybody gets to a point where they get kind of stuck, right? And as I started getting stuck, I didn't want to be stuck anymore. I wanted to figure out how to get unstuck and to keep improving. And my work ethic was just work more, just ski more, just do it more. But he really kind of was like, that's not always going to work. And then, you know, Wade Cox also taught me a lot about like cycle training and what training to peak at certain times started to look like, so that as I did get older and as my career started to shift, I was able to show up and deliver at certain tournaments when it mattered more. And so a lot of these things that I took from my experience from training with, I mean, I was so lucky. I skied with all the best skiers in the world ahead of me. And to get to have that opportunity, I don't know how I got so lucky, but I take that knowledge now and I try to really instill that in my kids. So what I kind of pride myself on is not really just coaching them, but getting them tournament prepared, so that when they show up and they're standing on the dock, they have all the confidence in the world, because confidence comes from preparation, right? And having them believe in my training program, how I think you should train. I'm not going to give away all my secrets on the podcast, right? You have to come ski with me if you want to learn them.
There you go. That's a good plug.
but you gotta have a plan. You have to train with a purpose, and you have to be prepared at the right times. And I think that's really what's making me a strong coach now, is sharing those things that I learned with my students, keeping them healthy, keeping them injury-free. I'm really big on cross training. I mean, I had Carl Percival trained me a lot to the end of my career, weight training, strength training, Olympic training. I wish I would have started that young. I have an amazing trainer now that's working with all my kids. And it makes a huge difference. So, you know, I'm blessed to be able to do that. And honestly, Tyler, it's kind of as exciting for me as it is for them. I mean, I know I'm just a teeny tiny part in their success, but I kind of thrive off like showing up, standing on the dock and watching my kid show up and win, you know? I mean,
Sure.
that gives me, when you're a competitor, you have that in you your whole life. That doesn't go away. And so running the Masters, trying to show up and run the best tournament of the year, have my kids skiing the best at all the tournaments that they go to, I think that keeps me a little sane. It helps fulfill that little competitive, you know, juju that I have inside of me that maybe I can't always tap into as much anymore as I get older. I have my kids doing their sports. You know, admittedly, I'm a huge Orange Theory buff. People probably are like, oh, I know why you go to Orange Theory, because you can compete, but you got to have an outlet for that as you get older. It doesn't go away inside you. And so, you know, selfishly, coaching also allows me to kind of enjoy and feel proud of some of that competitiveness that I still have inside me.
Yeah, and just to drill down on that point, that is a really good point. And obviously, you were at such a high level for such a long time. And then at some point, you go down the road and you say, well, it might be time for me to move to a different aspect of my life, you know, not as a professional skier, but doing other things. To be able to shift your energy from skiing 5-6 times a day into other areas, I think what you're telling us is like, it's kind of that same mentality, but it's through a different outlet. And I know that can be a difficult transition. Tell us about your transition during that particular time. And, you know, it sounds like you're really happy where you're at right now. You're having a lot of fun, but I'm sure it took some work to shift it from, okay, it's not so much about Rhoni skiing anymore. It's how am I going to do this? Whether it's for the kids that I'm coaching, whether it's for my family. Talk to us about that transition.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough. I think, you know, so many years it being, you know, as an athlete, it's about you. When do you eat? When do you train? When do you sleep? The first thing that'll cure you of that is having a baby, right? So, you know, when Lincoln was born, I went back to skiing and he was a really easy baby, but it didn't take me long to see that as he was a toddler, like he had things he liked to do. And, you know, he started getting interested, you know, in his things. And all of a sudden it didn't feel so good to show up at the lake and be like, hey, you're sitting in the boat, you're going with mom to the lake. And I'm sure that's different for different families. But I just quickly started to see that like he had a lot of things that he liked to do. And all of a sudden I wanted him to be able to do the things that he liked to do. And then when Ryder came along, I was like, okay, 2 boys deep, like this isn't about me. I just don't have the time anymore. And I've just never been someone that can do something halfway. So I was starting to struggle with like, I'm not skiing enough to feel good about my skiing. You know, we talk about confidence comes from preparation, and all of a sudden my preparation wasn't there. I wasn't feeling as confident, but I also wasn't willing to give up those things with my kids to be prepared. And that's when I started realizing like, hey, this is probably nature's way of telling me that it's time to start letting this go. And the coaching and the Nautique offer came, and those were things that took a lot less time than training. It's not just training, but it's imagine every weekend you're gone at a tournament. Sure. And you know, it's a lifelong 24-hour day commitment to be a high-end athlete, you know? And so I do think that having the Nautique offer to do the Masters, and I do think that having the coaching helped in the early years, because right away I was feeling fulfilled another way. I was also feeling fulfilled watching my boys, you know, and now I'm like a full-on addict in my kids' sport. I'm a full-on addict in my students' training. I want the Masters to be the best. And I think, you know, I've gotten to the point where like that shift just kind of happened over time, but it's definitely difficult. And, you know, sadly, we've seen lots of high-end athletes struggle with that. And, you know, I guess I'm just thankful that maybe I felt okay kind of letting go of the skiing when my mom duties kind of called me to do that. And I don't know if everyone's that lucky, but I just really got committed into what my kids wanted to do. And, you know, my kids are great little skiers. but they haven't chosen to be high-end tournament skiers. But I say this, my parents supported me in what I wanted to do, and I want to support them in what they want to do. And they ski, they still love to ski. I just don't think that's their first passion, And so I want to give them the same thing in their first passion that I was given, the opportunities that I was given, because I think there's so much to be said for that. And you're just success and happiness as a person, as an adult. So really they're at the end of the day, my kids, my family, my husband, Chris, they're my motivators. But my husband's a saint. He lets me run around like a chicken with my head cut off all the time, and he just whatever to make it all happen, he does. And so I'm lucky to have that support. My kids are the same. I mean, they're on the sidelines at the big tournaments cheering my students on. And so they're as invested in what the kids who train with me are as they are in their own sport. And we just kind of build one big happy competitive family in whatever sport it is you want to do.
That is so cool. I love that perspective. Well, I was going to ask you about skiing now. What does it look like? Do you just you're coaching, and then you're like, I think I want to go to the garage and pull out a ski. How do you decide to ski?
Well, I am not a weekend Wally. It frustrates me to no end to take random ski rides. So when I get periods of time, chunks of time where I can ski, I'll start skiing. But somehow, as the kids have gotten older, those chunks of time get less and less. So, will I occasionally get out there and take a random ski ride? Yes, but I just don't like doing that. It's once I do one ride, I'm sucked right back in. I'm oh, well, I could do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. So when there's chunks of time, I'll say weeks at a time where I can ski, I'll ski. If it's a random Tuesday afternoon and I could maybe sneak in a ski ride, I hardly ever do it. I'm really diligent about the gym. Like I said, I love my Orange Theory, but I can go there at 5 a.m. and I don't need anyone to do it. Yeah. Skiing, I got to stop the lake. I got to stop the job. I got to stop the kids to get out there and do it. And sadly, I just don't make the time to do that anymore.
Well, and this question, and it's more of a statement to finish out, kind of when you look back on your career and everything that you're even doing now, and when you do ski, how would you finish the sentence, I water ski because?
I think I would say I water ski because I'm addicted to the never-ending challenge. I mean, there's always another buoy. There's always another trick. There's always another foot. There's always a way to figure out how to do it better, faster, easier. As a coach, I love trying to figure out the fastest, easiest, cleanest, best way to teach my kids. So I'm always tinkering with that. I will say I am a huge student of the sport. I watch all the webcasts. I watch all the tournament. My 11-year-old Ryder, he watched every single trick skier at the Swiss tournament this last weekend. I mean, we're fans of the sport. I water ski because I'm a fan of the sport. I water ski because I love the sport. I'm a student of the sport. And I just love water skiing. I don't know. It was just born in my blood. And I think I'll probably just die doing the same thing, but it makes me happy, Tyler. And, it's not an easy sport.
No,
it's really not. It's cutthroat. It's challenging. It's emotionally tough. It's physically tough. It's mentally tough. You fly all over the world with all different conditions, different drivers, different boats, different types of water. It's not for the faint at heart, that's for sure. But I think that and this maybe ties back to that first question you asked me, Canyon Lake Ski Club, Superstars, going to the Masters and not the Junior Masters. It's that never ending chase. And I've obviously got something inside me that just doesn't want to let it go.
That's an excellent answer. I love that answer. Well, Rhoni, if people want to reach out to you and find you, I want to give you a handoff of where they can find you. Maybe they want to come ski with you, and then you can give them your secrets that you won't tell us on the podcast.
There you go. Yeah. Well, first I'll say everybody needs to go to the Masters website. So that's www.masterswaterski.com. The schedule of events for the 2023 Masters is there. The athletes that are qualifying are going there. Everything you need to know about the event is there. So go there first. Then you can come to the Masters and see me there, and we can talk. And yeah, but I'm looking forward to an amazing event this year. I'm really excited that we're hosting the 30th Junior Masters this year. I mean, these are huge milestones, right? We're 63 years old, 30 Junior Masters. We're not slowing down. Nautique's just continuing to support me to make this thing bigger and better every year. And I can't wait to see where we take it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it's going to be unbelievable. I hope everybody on the podcast who's ever considered going, or those who haven't considered going, go this year. It is going to be unbelievable, and you're not going to want to miss it or regret it. So, Rhoni Barton-Bischoff, thank you so much for joining the Hit It podcast. We've got to have you back someday in the future.
I would love to be back. I have so many fun things to share. And Tyler, I can't thank you enough, tell you what it means to me to get honored and recognized and get to be a part of this, because it really means a lot to me. So thank you so much.